Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'd like to firstly begin by acknowledging the efforts of the Foreign Minister and the Justice Minister in their work in the preparation of this bill. And I'd also like to acknowledge the sensible bipartisan approach adopted by those opposite. We cannot protect children too much. Not just Australian children, but this problem of child sex or exploitation knows no international boundaries. The exact figures on child sexual exploitation and child trafficking are almost impossible to accurately determine. But UNICEF, interestingly, have identified that as many as 2 million children are exploited in the commercial sex trade around the world. There is a particular problem in relation to child exploitation in Southeast Asia, where some of the world's most vulnerable and impoverished children are most at risk. For example, in Indonesia, though many young girls often overstate their age, it's estimated once again by UNICEF that some 30% of female prostitutes are under the age of 18 years. Some are as young as 10 years of age. An estimated 40,000 to 70,000 children in Indonesia are victims of sexual exploitation, and an estimated 100,000 children are trafficked every year. An international labour organisation study in Port Moresby in 2011 was able to interview 175 child sex workers in less than 8 weeks. Despite its hidden and the illegal nature of that trade, they found children as young as 10 involved in commercial sex work. They found that all children consumed alcohol and that many had been raped or physically abused. 13 had been tested and found to be HIV positive, and many had gone through pregnancies and abortions. 41% had become sex workers before they were 15, and children were found to see as many as 10 clients a day. Many of those clients, sadly, Mr Deputy Speaker, come from this country, and many of those clients are on the registered sex offenders, who are registered sex offenders. Our current laws just simply aren't keeping up to speed with the prevention of this vile conduct. You're right. You're right if I keep going. So who is this bill going to impact upon, Mr Deputy Speaker? The bill will impact upon registered offenders who have been convicted of child sex offence and placed by a court on a state or territory register. Under state and territory laws, registered offenders have reporting obligations for between 5 and 15 years, depending on the seriousness of the offence. In the most egregious of cases, the obligations are for life. Their reporting obligations enable authorities to monitor and supervise these registered offenders. At any one time, there is up to 20,000 registered child sex offenders. Every year, some 2,500 new offenders are added to the registers, while slightly fewer than that complete their reporting obligations each year. This is a blight on our country, that up until now, these mainly men, it has to be said, travel overseas to take part in the exploitation of young children. There's been more than 770 registered child sex offenders that have travelled from Australia overseas in 2016 alone, many of whom had violated an obligation under state or territory laws to notify police of their intended travel, many of whom had been recorded by police as being of a medium, high or very high risk of reoffending, and who had been convicted of offences against children under 13 years of age. Now, there's currently no legal authority to cancel or refuse to issue a passport solely on the basis that a person has been convicted of a child sex offence. Child sex offenders can be denied a passport while they are on parole under Section 12 of the Passports Act. Since the 1st of January 2011, the Minister for Foreign Affairs has only received 63 requests to deny passports to child sex offenders. So clearly, the laws that we have in this country to date are simply not working. They are not protecting children overseas from this vile child sex trafficking and sex tourism. So the state and territory registers under the new system of passport denial will record the details of child sex offenders with reporting responsibilities. When new offenders are convicted and entered into one of these registers, the state or territory will make a passport denial request to DFAT. If the offender has a passport, the Minister for Foreign Affairs will cancel any Australian passport that the person holds, and DFAT will notify the offender. But if the offender has no passport, DFAT will put an alert in its system which will flag if the offender applies for a passport, and the passport will be refused. Consistent with how the relevant section of the Passports Act already operates, offenders will be unable to seek administrative review of these decisions. If and when the offender no longer has reporting responsibilities, the offender will be able to hold a passport in the usual way. Mr Deputy Speaker, these are important reforms. They will protect children overseas from this sort of conduct, and I'm very pleased that this is a bipartisan approach to this bill, and I congratulate the Minister for Justice and the Foreign Minister on their great work, and I commend the bill to the House.
Thank you.